Hi, Fashion Dolls. It is Motivation Monday, April 10th, the day after Easter Sunday, and welcome back to an all new episode of Style by Stevie. I am super excited to be back, ladies and gentlemen. Friday, we had to reschedule our interview with today's first special guest because my phone was having issues and I had to change over phones. It was crazy. My phone would not hold a charge. So, without further ado, let's welcome our incredibly talented special guest, Jesse Bingham.
Oh man, hold on. Uh, Having a problem here. Can you hear me?
You can split your cam. Yep, I can hear you.
Hold on, my camera's doing something weird. Sorry.
Take your
Uh,
time.
uh, okay. There. Boom. There I go. Hey,
Hello. Hello. Welcome to the Dollhouse. How are you?
I'm outstanding. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. It is such a pleasure to have you here. I want to apologize to you before we kick this interview off sincerely because Friday we had our interview scheduled, but my phone would not hold a charge. So I had to switch over to the phone that I typically do my interviews on. And now we're here. So glad to have you here.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. I know we talked about this a long time ago, so I appreciate
Yes,
it. I really do.
it's been set in the works and now it is finally happening. Finally. All right. So before we kick off this interview, how has 2023 been for you so far? We're now in April, and then before you know it, May. So how has the year so far been for you?
It's been amazing. I've been loving it. I've done a couple of projects already. I've been building some things. So like I promised myself last year, I was like, man, I'm gonna go into I gotta push forward swinging, man. Like I can't just sit around. No grass, no moss ever grew on a rolling stone, they say.
Come on. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's start way back when. You were born in Los Angeles, California. Tell us a little bit about that. And your mom was a civil rights activist. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing. How many brothers? How many sisters?
Um, I grew up in LA and like the LA area during the 80s and 90s. So everywhere from Compton to
Yeah.
Inglewood, I've lived in. Like I didn't grow up in a very well, it's South Central in the 90s. You know what I mean? Like so it was rugged. It was fun. It has upsides, downsides. Had to learn some things faster, but um, it was it was fun for the most part. Dangerous other times, but it was pretty cool. Um, my mom, she's definitely a civil rights activist. Always has been, like on the front line, schools
Yeah.
when it comes to education and kids. Always, always in it, always, and never holding back. Just she's my dad too, always there. So is it? I wish I could give you more because there's so much in that question. But yeah, LA was great time, great times growing up.
And you started off as an athlete,
Yeah.
and right after graduating high school, you went to West Los Angeles College. So tell us a little bit about that experience. Yes, he's looking at me like, how she know this? I do my research. I stay on it. I'm like the Black Barbara Walters, honey. I know it.
Yeah. I played football all the way up through freshman year in college. Unfortunately, what really took me out of it, I had okay, so to answer your question, I have several siblings. My parents had four kids, but we had the kind of household that my parents, somebody at some point, always, cousins or somebody. So we were raised like siblings with several of our cousins. So I have really like a lot of siblings in that regard. But I had my godbrother died.
So
He was 21, I was 18, and that really kind of I didn't like a lot of stuff that I used to like. You go through. I was too young to really recognize depression, but I went through like a deep depression, and it really impacted kind of how I looked at the things I used to love, and it changed my trajectory totally. Like my college, my senior year emotionally was really rough for me. Had a great performance year, but when I was going to college, I told my coach I was leaving. And he was like, "Promise me you coming back," and I was like, "I don't think so." I just really had to leave LA at the time.
Needed a change of scenery after you lost
Yeah,
your
I needed it.
and
I
I
needed
apologize.
it. Ah,
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
go back. You're so welcome. I'm gonna go back to you for a minute because I want to first off, before I get to my point, I want to applaud you as a black man sitting here in front of the audience and being vulnerable and transparent because we know that with us, not just you being a black man or me being a black woman or just us as people of color as a collective, you guys know where I'm going with this. When
Right.
it comes to mental, and I seen it was Taraji P. Henson, Angie Martinez. Hi Liz. Said something about maintaining your peace and protecting your peace. For us as people of color, when it comes to mental health, we don't talk about it enough. We have been
Right.
taught for years that we have to sweep it up under the rug. Don't talk about it, just talk to God about it. But I say this, faith without work is done. God put therapists here for a reason. So if you are not going to talk to somebody and get professional help, you need to, because that can be the stepping stone to help and encourage other people to get you where you need to be. Because for
Well, in,
us in the black community, we don't talk about it. We don't normalize and
well,
prioritize.
in respect to that, particular thing, we don't, as a culture, we don't have a frame of reference for it.
Mm,
So when you think about the trauma that impacts the black community in America, like the American black
yeah.
community, it doesn't like it. We don't have a real frame of reference for that because a lot of us live under the poverty line, roughly 25% of us, and the majority of us live check to check. So the idea of being able to make the time to take care of ourselves psychologically is very hard to ingest because I don't have time to worry about my traumas as a child. I don't have time to
Mm,
consider that my grief as something that can be impacting how I'm making I don't have time for it because I got X, Y, and Z going on all the time, every day in my life. And it's very tough in our community to really just
talk about it.
to heal
Open up.
ourselves
Right.
because it's one trauma after another.
And to add on to that trauma, that's 400 years of trauma that has been stuck with us from our ancestors to generation. We've been taught not to talk about it. What goes on in this house, especially in the black household,
Right.
stays in this house. We don't talk about it. We keep
Right.
it private. But now you have people like the big names, like the Taraji P. Hensons, the Jennifer Lewises, even Missy Elliott,
Right.
one of my female rappers. They are now opening up and saying, I've experienced depression. Now we have a
Right.
question from Liz. She wants to know, what do you feel are concrete steps that we can take to help ourselves and others?
Uh, Concrete steps that we can help ourselves and others. One, admitting that we're hurt.
Mm, yes.
It's hard to admit that you're hurt. We have basic emotions and that we deal with as people, basic human emotions. They're literally like an emotional will if you look that up, psychological formats. And joy and grief are basic human emotions. And they drive a bunch of our secondary and tertiary emotions. So I experience joy, then as a consequence of experiencing joy, now I'm happy. I'm happy, so I can become elated, but it all starts with joy, and the same thing with grief. Like I can't get angry until I've experienced grief, until I can recognize that I'm like that. There's grief because there's like these 5 stages of grief, and so for us, it's first being able to admit that I'm hurt, and because a lot of us feel like disempowered. I don't know, maybe disempowered isn't the proper real word, but I'm just going to use it. Why not? We feel weak by admitting our feelings exist. And if we can start with admitting, yo, I got a problem with something. I'm hurt. Once I recognize I'm hurt, then I can start investigating my hurt. I can't, then that's like a step. You know what I mean? That's a step to really moving forward. Or we'll just start kind of pinging the different things. Oh, I'm hurt. I'm going to avoid that and do this, but that's creating this and that's creating that. So now I have this, I'm in the mud. It's all muddy now. So the first step, I would say admitting that I'm hurt. There's grief.
I love what Liz just says. Depression does not equal ugly.
No.
And Auntie Minnie says, Mr. Bingham, okay, here, come through. Yes, I feel like a sunflower today. You guys notice the color combo?
The color wheel, I see it.
Yes, I just wanted to do something different. So special thanks to my makeup artist and the glam team here at Style. Every episode, you're not going to see a different woman. I'm a chameleon. I'm always changing my color. So tomorrow I might have black hair. The next day I might have blonde. The next day I might be a redhead. I might have it short, long. I'm always on the spectrum of color. And speaking of the spectrum, we're going to talk about your project, Gerald's Hand, which is a very important project that we need to discuss. And it also features Tanisha Lynn, who we've had on the show. You guys can check her out in Jack Squad 2, which is out now on Tubi. But let me read some of you guys' questions. Y'all got me sidetracked. Auntie Minnie says, Mr. Bingham, what could you share with a young black male in South Central that feels like crying is a sign of weakness? How did you survive growing up that way too strong?
Well, I was fortunate enough not only to have a lot of strong women in my life, but I was fortunate enough to have strong men in my life.
Yeah.
And my father would like actually talk to me about stuff. Like we didn't talk often about any emotions or anything like that, but when he did talk to me about things like that, he talked to me. And so one of the things I learned, there was a movie called The Boys in Company C. I will never forget it because there's a scene in that movie that changed how I thought about things. In this movie, The Boys in Company C, it was a army movie, like maybe in the 80s or 90s or something like that. I didn't see it until I was obviously like a teenager. And there were these guys, they were playing the soccer game. And so this guy says, there's an explosion and one of his friends died. His friend saved his life. And movie's ending and he's crying a little bit. And he's like, he tells the sergeant, he's like, man, I don't want them to see me cry. And the man looks at him and says, you're a grown ass man. You can cry if you feel like it.
Come on.
And that changed how I looked at things because we put these rules on ourselves. And if you don't, and if if you're an adult person, you decide what your life is going to be. And if you feel like crying, then cry. So I would say any young man that lives in South Central that's going through that, obviously male culture, you know, it comes with stigmas and issues that you have to deal with because of male culture. It lives on the spectrum, but there's certain things that you actually have to be responsible for. At the same time, it doesn't mean you can't be all these other things as well. And it's important that a young man get to know themselves and respect themselves and not live simply for the respect of other people.
Absolutely. 100%. And that with trickling down with, oh, don't cry. I'm glad you touched on that, Auntie Minnie, because black men, don't cry, that'll show a sign of weakness. That results into harm to other people who are marginalized, LGBT, black women, and we're all marginalized as a culture, as people of color. So that results in what I like to call toxic masculinity, where for years black men have been taught not to cry, suck it up if they scrape their knee or fall. And I mean, as young toddlers, as babies, we were taught this. If we scrape our knee, fall off a bicycle, we cry because it hurts a little. But to tell a child, don't cry, suck it up, be a man,
And
that is
that,
going to result in toxic
well, the thing
masculinity.
is,
And that's
that
what I see.
is
Yeah.
toxic masculinity.
And
And like,
we have,
because,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I'm saying that is toxic
Yeah.
masculinity. Like this whole thing where it's bad to be masculine. It's not toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is what you described, and that's not you teaching young men not to not to accept their emotions on the thing, because as men we have a social, as men you have social responsibilities. That's a truth. But the understanding is that it's okay to feel pain. That's a truth. It's not just your truth. That's the truth. And I think a lot of times what we run into is men don't tend not to communicate. We're not taught to communicate properly, essentially. And so when we're telling our sons that, when we're telling our little brothers that, what we're saying is like, don't cry. Don't let them see you cry. It's a misinterpretation of I feel like it muddies the water. It's hard for a child because a child doesn't understand nuances. So if I'm in the field of competition and I'm like, hey man, chill out, like don't let them see you cry. This is not what I'm telling another man is this is not the time to deal with this right now. Because I spent time in the military. If I'm in the military, we're in the field, or there's a person, we're in a hospital, helping somebody. Like, bro, this is not the time to start crying because you have a job to do. You need to get through this, and then we can deal with that. But if you don't communicate that to a kid, they just think I'm bad if I cry.
Right.
But the thing is, if I lock into my emotions when I'm supposed to help you, I've messed up. Because now I can't think straight. I can't do my job. That's anybody operating in a professional capacity. But I have to be able to process my emotions. Because if I don't, like you said, now I'm breaking something inside of me. And I'll end up breaking people around me. Because as they say, hurt people hurt people.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you served in the military. You served in the United States Air Force. Salute to you and the troops out there. That's another thing. Even soldiers get PTSD, that trauma that they've seen while serving in the military and the army. You hear about it. They talk about it. Well, I served in, even vets. My father served in the military. My brother and uncle served in the military. So that trauma that they've seen out here while they were serving is going to stick with them.
Right.
And result in flashbacks, having bad dreams, and it's
depression.
How do I deal with this?
Say again?
It says the feeling that it gives you as the person who's, the wives, the mothers, the daughters, the sisters, as a sister, it's like, how do we help with this? What can we do to help our brothers or our significant others? We kind of beat ourselves up. It's just like, God, we wish we could do something about it, but you can. And that is be a support system.
Right.
That is be there for them.
Right.
Listen to them. And in order for us to heal, we have to be able to hear each other out.
Right.
In order to heal the trauma, and shout outs to Conscious TV. I love me some Conscious TV. Make sure you guys go subscribe to him. He says that we as people of color, we have a lot of unpacking to do. Layer by layer by layer by layer by layer.
Right.
We have a lot of unpacking to do. The trauma that we've seen, whether you served in the military. So for you, serving in the United States Air Force, being away from your family, because that can be challenging for anybody to be separated from their family. It's like, okay, you hear parents say it all the time, what we like to call the empty nest syndrome, when your child has either went off to college or went to the military. It's just like, it takes a toll on you mentally. You start getting that anxiety and fearlessness from being away, fearlessness, or not fearlessness, that sort of afraidness from being away from home, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And your parents start to get it as well too. So for you, as a young black man, jumping in and jump-starting your career into the industry, being in the United States Air Force, what was that like for you, and how did you balance your mental health?
It was hard. It was hard. Because the military is different world.
Yeah.
Altogether. It's a different world altogether. It's not like it's not a one for one. So the things that apply outside don't apply inside. And I was a 20-year-old kid coming from South Central Los Angeles, and I wasn't at some points I wasn't ready for because what I learned from my father, he served, and I didn't.
Mhm.
And funny thing, he was like, they were like, I didn't think you would be the one who went, you know, and that was just because of my mentality. I questioned things, I wanted to see things, I pushed boundaries and things like that all the time. So I was I was under the impression that it was merit based. Like if I work hard, then my effort would be my you know what I mean as a response to my effort I would be rewarded, and that's I would be judged on, and that just wasn't what it was, and that was a big shock for me. And so it was hard. It wasn't necessarily hard leaving home, um but it was hard just kind of dealing with everything I'd already been dealing with and being in this place where it was like a big culture shock. I made lifelong friends. That's where I met my wife. And but it was hard leaving her and my kids at one point. And that changed a lot of stuff for me too. So it was like, you know, growing up, you know what I mean? I had to really kind of grow up a little faster than I thought I would. And I think that's what that was the hardest thing, that the learning curve is sharp.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. And with that, that helps you build and become even stronger
Right,
to conquer anything.
right.
And we're going to move fast because after you got the honorable mention, after you served in the Air Force, you then went on to move to Atlanta to jumpstart your acting career. And we're going to dive right into it because I know we're limited on time. I
Okay, I got you.
promise him I wasn't going to keep him, ladies and gentlemen. But you guys are going to get another conversation. You guys are getting 2 for 1 today. So you guys are going to get a girl talk with my girl, Blue Harmony, singer and songwriter. 2 women, and we're both going to give our perspectives. We're going to be talking colorism. We're also going to be talking about being a successful Black woman in 2023 and much more. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. That is up next at 4 p.m. But let's get to your projects. You moved on to Atlanta, and now you have 2 hit projects that are out right now. Keeping Secrets, you played the character of Dr. Barnes, and you played the character of Sebastian and Gerald's Hands. Now,
Right.
back to what we talked about earlier. You talked about being on the spectrum. This particular character, the main character in this project of Gerald's Hands, suffers from
Hmm.
autism, and it's a loss, this number of things. It's sort of like a loaded amount of things that are going on with this
Right,
character. Now,
right.
your character, because I've seen some of your other projects, I was so mad at your character because it's different from the characters that you play. I was like, boy, if you don't put, I can't get into it. Put that bottle down. But we have a question for you before we get into that from Island Yankee Alpha Turner. He wants to know, what is the difference between toxic masculinity and program toxicity?
Well, toxic masculinity, I believe, is rooted in a misconception of manhood.
Yeah.
It separates being a man from being a human. And as a man, I can definitely relate to there's a lack of um empathy for masculinity in the world. Like there's just, as a man, there's a lack of empathy. Like a lot of times it's what's driven is like, hey, can you provide? And if not, what kind of man are you? You know what I mean? And I think program toxicity is more of a social thing. Like it's just being an a-hole, in my opinion. Like, program masculinity is just being an a-hole. Like the society, you're driven by, you followed society's ideas of normalcy and pushed it to a place where it defines you. Kind of like people who join like the military, but as they join the military, they now identify themselves themselves as this person. This is the thing that defines me as a person, and it doesn't matter what it is. Like, this is the thing that defines me, and it'll separate everybody else who's not doing this sucks. And they're terrible people. And it doesn't, you know, in my opinion, this is my opinion. It doesn't separate like the healthy spectrums that exist in people.
And
The nuances don't exist for that person.
And you have black men that are in the comments right now. If you look, they're agreeing with you. Trent says, love your transparency, man. Your favorite feat says, great question, Island Yankee, and great answer, Jesse. That void is empathy. Of empathy is so real. Now, Britton asked the question, as a South African elementary school teacher, I find there is a disconnect when it comes to our identity as people of color and how we experience excellence in the performance arts. Do you both agree? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. I talk about it all the time here as a woman of color. I could tell you this, and I say this all the time. I know that I will never be able to receive the garments of a woman that is non-black. I already know. I've experienced it all. And if you stay tuned in the next hour, I will be a little bit more transparent. I've experienced colorism, misogynoir. Misogynoir, for those of you who do not know, because as you guys can see, I'm not the most petite girl in the room. I am about 5'7", very curvaceous. And I've been told, well, this looks kind of muscular. Even our first lady, Michelle Obama, has experienced. That's what misogynoir is. And it is a term that has been coined by Moya Bailey. So when black women experience misogynoir, it is dangerous. There is literally like a driving force to oppress black women, to stop us from getting these positions, because they want to say, oh, well, you're built too curvy, you're built too tall. Oh, your features are masculine. You've got big hands, big shoulders, your arms. Michelle Obama and Serena Williams are two black women who have experienced it. Even one of my favorite female rappers, Meg Thee Stallion, has experienced it. So I am not the shortest girl in the room. I'm very tall and curvy. So if you guys have seen the pictures, you know. But yes,
no,
go ahead, Jesse.
To that. Two things. One, the biggest issue that we have to understand about America and black identity in America is that the diaspora doesn't share the same identity issue. So when it comes to, say, the misogynoir things, those are very those aren't built on real, like, human concepts. Race isn't built on a real human concept. So when we play that game, you know what I mean? Like, that's why it's hard to really kind of deal with our issues. And this is why we have so much trauma and things like that. Because if we could just touch back on, like, say, these things, when you look systemically throughout American history and the experience of black Americans in American history, trauma is deep-rooted trauma, damaging trauma, psychologically driven trauma. Like, for example, you take the Nader period in America, which is talked about in history books. That's the time between Reconstruction, the end of Reconstruction, and the beginning of Jim Crow. There's an era there that they call it the Nader. The Nader is where you start creating sundown towns and all this other stuff. And it was a very terroristic area of American history. And that defined a lot of us, that defined so much for our culture pushing forward. Now, that kind of trauma, that's not healed. That hasn't healed. You just pass that down. Like, why don't black people have pushed the light on in the car at night? I used to think it was illegal. But the reality is, if you were a motorist traveling back then, if you were in the wrong town and the dome light was on and they saw you and it's a sundown town, you could die. But how many grandmamas told their grandkids that? So you take the same thing with all these other bits and pieces. So, like, for example, a nuclear family, who protects the family? The man is required to protect the family, because physically my wife can't go head to head with some dude. It's not happening. So it's my job. But so when you take that dude out, it creates a different trauma for women, takes different trauma for their kids. Or you take a man's family away, you leave him there. What his identity of self, his value, his social value has taken a hit, and then we tell him you're not man enough. That takes and you see this play all these so it that those traumas leak into all these different social economic aspects of our lives. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so it creates all this other stuff. So I think, like you said, like the things that women deal with in America, especially the American black woman, a lot of the issues come from the same place that the trauma for the black man comes from, and that's this very, very, very bold line that's only driven for the group. It's like if you're depending on him, you suck. If you're depending on her, you suck. In the meantime, there's so many different nuances. This dude can't get the same job, doesn't have the same job opportunities as this guy has, but you're saying he's not man enough. This dude is more likely to go to jail than these other people, but you're saying he's just a criminal. And you're telling this woman, well, you're being too masculine. Well, she's trying to compete, and being feminine, she's being taken advantage of, and there's this big imbalance that goes on. But I don't want to beat that drum too long. But I'm just saying, there's just so much that again, the root. I think the answer is always find out who we got to start with. Getting to know ourselves if we want to have a very healthy future as a group of people. But the second thing was, as far as Gerald's Hand goes, again, shout out to Nas Panky.
Yeah.
It was hard for me at first to do that role because it was fun because I never get to be that guy, but it was hard because I thought he was a jerk. Like I just thought he was a jerk.
Put that bottle down when I see you in that trailer. I was like, what are you doing?
Like I just thought he was such a jerk. But the thing about acting is you got to be an advocate for your character.
Yeah.
And that kind of pain comes from somewhere. A person like that has pain. They're not just that in a vacuum. They have pain. And if I can identify with why does this person feel that way, man? Like, you know what I mean? Like that person's trying to heal, and there's something wrong with that, man. Like, but I can't just throw him off because then I wouldn't do you a favor as an actor. I'm not serving you if I'm like, apologizing while I'm acting for what he's doing. Because then you're like, man. Then you won't hate me. You'll just pity me, and you need to hate him.
Now, how would you describe the differences between your character, Dr. Barnes, and Sebastian? Because Sebastian is completely different than your character.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. Dr. Barnes, I don't know, like in the film Keeping Secrets, I wasn't a very vocal character. You know what I mean? I wasn't a very vocal character. I was there and I played a role. My behavior was the role. And Dr. Barnes was just unapologetically like debaucherous. You know what I mean? And like he didn't really have a sense of like responsibility. But Sebastian took full responsibility for everything, though misguided as he was. He had great intention, but he just was misguided in his choices. And he wanted to take full responsibility for everything and provide for everybody, for his woman, but he was just broken.
Absolutely. So you guys go and you check out these amazing projects, Keeping Secrets and Gerald's Hand. I'm going to take a few questions, and then we're going to close out. I can't keep Jesse. I know the conversation is so riveting, and I see you guys all are coming in, but you guys are getting 2 shows today to make up for Friday, because Friday I had to go and get my phone turned over. It was a mess. So we had to get some rewiring done to the house yesterday with electricity. It's been a lot going on throughout the week that y'all have not seen. So I wanted to make sure that I came on and give you guys an amazing show today. 2 jam-packed shows. So coming up next, you guys are going to be getting a girl talk with my girl, Blue Harmony. We're going to be talking colorism and so much more in the next hour. So make sure you guys tune in at 4 p.m. Now, let me take a few questions. We got a question from Liz. She wants to know, do you ever remain in character after your role is done?
No,
Mm,
no. Method acting I find is good for some things, just not all things. Uh, Acting can be dangerous psychologically because your brain doesn't know the difference between pretend and for real. And if you go too far down the rabbit hole, that can impact the people around you. So I like exercising a certain level of representation acting, but not using method act too much because I got a family and my kids. If I come in acting like my character from Gerald's Hands, my kids won't. If I come in with that energy, that's a problem for my family, and I got to be responsible that way. But if
right.
I ever do find myself with that energy coming off, I'll definitely find some time to chill out, somewhere to decompress before I walk in the door.
Absolutely. And that's not only happened to I'm pretty sure you've been able to balance it out, but it's happened to other actors as well too. It's happened to you guys remember Lupita. Lupita did the
Mhm.
movie Us. She said after doing that character, because the character was so demonic, it was a horror film. She said she literally had to detox
Mhm.
after doing that film, doing that project. So that happens. Even Kiki Palmer said it. Angela Bassett, when she played Tina Turner, she said she was doing this thing with her head that Tina used to do. So she took it. I mean, it happens. And sometimes
Winona
our things.
Ryder, Angelina Jolie, obviously, rest in peace. What's his name? My guy from Batman, Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
Like it could be very problematic.
And our families will get it if you are an actor out there, they understand. Let me get to a couple more questions. All right, fashion dolls. Let me see. Alan Yankee typed something for me. Wait a minute in the question box. Let me see. Auntie Minnie, she wants to know. I feel like you seem to be solid in your circle and strong in your square. God bless you. We love to hear more from you in the future. Oh, it was a comment. Liz says so. Acting requires responsibility. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Be careful with your gear. Britton Marcus wants to know the definition of success for each of you, for both of us. Okay. So you want me to start or you want Jesse? Which one, ladies and gentlemen? You guys let me know. What would you prefer? Definition of success. Because that is a good
I'll
question. You
go.
guys are coming in.
I'll go.
I'm
It's no problem.
seeing them. Okay. Take it away.
To me, success looks like joy.
Mm,
You know, functional, healthy joy. Being able for me to maintain joy and participate in the joy of the people that I love.
absolutely. Success for me is being grounded by a circle of family and friends who understand you. Like Alan Yankee has been there with me through thick and thin. Always an ear that can listen whenever I need to speak or say what I need to say. K Tooks and I have a few others that are in the circle. Conscious TV, I could go on and on. List of people, Bubs, so many who have been there to listen whenever I'm feeling down and depressed. Because I know for some reason last week I was very, very emotional, and I guess the weather could have had something to do with it. But just sitting down and reflective on what could have been, and he told me to not be a revisionist historian, meaning don't always go back into the past. So I would have to say success for me is being grounded and protected by God and a circle of people who
Amen.
understand. And I am totally thankful for that. Remember when Beyonce did her Oscars acceptance, not Oscars, but her Grammys acceptance speech? She said, I am deeply what? Divinely protected by God. And we all are. So for me, before I do my show, I always say a prayer. I always do my affirmations and manifestations, even first thing when I wake up in the morning to kickstart a good day. Definitely. And that is my definition of success, having a circle of people that understand.
Amen to that.
Yes. So a little preachy, a little long winded, but straight to the point. And I want you guys to take away from these two definitions, which is joy in having a strong, solid support circle, especially if you want to get into this business as an actor or a singer or a director, whatever you're trying to do to jumpstart your career. Make sure you have the right people around you.
Yeah.
Because even if you reach a certain pinnacle, you could be on, let's say, Shonda Rhimes status, winning Oscars and Emmys and all of these things, all of the accolades, getting in Vanity Fair and all of these magazines, and you get to a certain pinnacle, and it's like the people are there. Are you genuine, or are you there
Right.
for just to get what you can?
Right.
So those are the questions that you have to take into consideration. Keep the people who are genuine and truly there for you around. And we
In the
have
words of
one.
Nipsey Hussle, nobody ever bossed up alone.
Absolutely. And we have another question for you from Liz. She wants to know, do you feel with these words, what do you feel with these words, middle, resource, and steps?
Middle, resource, and steps. Um, what do I feel with these words? Uh, um, Middle, as I feel like if I'm not quite sure what the question is, but what I feel about the words, I feel like middle means re resource. What would be the word? Would be assets, and steps would be action.
Absolutely. 100%. And you need all of these things to get from point A to point B. And you've got family watching. Vamp Dog says keep that work going, cuz love you, fam bam.
Love you too, bro.
That's what I'm talking about that strong, solid support circle. Family, even classmates watch the platform and they're just like, oh my God, you've changed so much. You've now found your voice. Because I wasn't always this outspoken. I've always had a shyness and a coyness about me. But now it's like, hey, I'm an open book. I am willing to be vulnerable and allow my guests that come on my platform to be vulnerable as well too. And share this information with people out here who are going through similar issues. So that's all I got. I don't want to go over because I know Jesse said we're on a time crunch, and that we are. So without further ado, Jesse, any final words and remarks for your support circle? Because you had family, you have some of your colleagues that are also actors come in and view the interview and conversation and engage. What advice would you give to them and the next generation of other actors that are coming right after you? Because there is someone that is following in your footsteps right along.
I would say, love God, have a nurturing relationship with God, develop a nurturing
Yes,
relationship with yourself, and nurture the people that you love, and everything else falls into place. You know, um,
absolutely.
and love, the way I view it, is more the nurturing sense, and that's the same way you would love a plant. I'm not getting something directly from this planet just existing, but I find joy in watching it grow. And every plant needs specific type of attention, and it's my job to learn what that is. And once I learn what that is, I'm able to love it the way it needs love, not just the way I want to love it. And that's nurturing. And I feel like that's the kind of relationship we need to have with God, the kind of relationship we need to have with ourselves, and the kind of relationship that we need to have with people around us. Because if the human being lacks the ability to perceive, or they don't have a reference for it, and no matter what my mom and daddy, my dog, my cat, my cousins, no matter what I've been through in life, if God is a reference for what love is, then I'll learn how to nurture myself. And once I learn how to nurture myself, I'll then be able to nurture the people that I love. And if I can't do those things, then life is going to be infinitely hard, because I'm always being in a battle with myself and the world. So I'd rather be at peace with myself and at war with the world than at peace with the world. You know what I mean? In a battle with myself. So I would tell everybody, again, learn to have a relationship with God, learn to have a nurturing relationship with yourself, and nurture the people around you.
Absolutely. Liz agrees. She says love of God and self is essential. Absolutely. Yes. All right, fashion dolls. So, Jesse, let everyone know where they can follow you and they can check out these phenomenal
Uh,
projects.
you can follow me on IG, uh, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Um, that's really the platforms I'm on. The right now, currently, the recent projects I've been there on Tubi. Um, and I still have some on Instagram. I mean, excuse me, Amazon, Apple TV. As far as I did a project before this called Set Secrets. That's on Apple TV. Um, yeah, so I'm out there. Like, but you want to follow me? IG, Facebook, Twitter.
And we will have the full interview up on Style by Stevie. Daytime, you guys will be getting 2 interviews. We are in a few. Make sure you guys go get yourself something to drink, something to snack on, and come back for this amazing. We have another conversation coming up with my girl, Blue Harmony. It's going to be a girl talk, and it's just going to be me and her, Black women, sharing our experiences from colorism to being a successful woman of color in 2023. So make sure you guys tune in. Coming up next at 4 p.m. Special thanks to Jesse. We finally got the interview. We finally did it. It was an amazing conversation, and we hope you all took something from this. We talked about mental health. So watch the interview from beginning to end. And we will see you in the next hour, 4 p.m. Make sure you guys tune in with our guest, Blue Harmony. Take care, everyone.